This 4-year-old beggar girl is kicked out of church for being barefoot, but a millionaire rises from the back pew and something happens. Comment. What you think will happen. Your opinion is very important, and subscribe to my channel to support my work. Your help is very important. The biting wind of June whipped through the streets of Aspen, Colorado, when 6-year-old Lily was brutally shoved down the stone steps of St. Michael's Church. Her small, bare feet smacked against the cold stones as she tumbled, trying to protect her face with her skinny hands. The janitor, a burly man in a blue uniform, stood at the top of the stairs with his arms crossed, his scornful expression directed at the girl now crying on the ground. "I've told you before, I don't want any beggars in here," he shouted for everyone to hear. "This is a church for decent people." Lily slowly got to her feet, wiping the blood that trickled from a small cut on her knee. Her tattered clothes, a faded pink dress that had once been pretty in some distant time, were now soiled with dirt and tears. She looked back, searching for her Grandma Rose, who had stayed in the last pew throughout Sunday Mass. Rose, at 78 years old, walked with difficulty, supported by an improvised cane made of wood found on the street. Her grey hair was pulled back in a simple bun, and her black dress, though clean, showed the signs of someone who had lost everything. She approached Lily with eyes filled with tears and indignation. "How dare you do that to a child?" Rose questioned, her voice trembling with emotion. "We came here to pray, just like everyone else." The janitor descended a few steps, intimidatingly. "Just look at you two, barefoot, stinking. You think you can enter the house of God in that state? Go find a homeless shelter." The parishioners leaving Mass observed the scene in silence. Some well-dressed women whispered among themselves, shaking their heads in disapproval, not at the inhumane treatment, but at the presence of the two there. Men in suits averted their gaze, pretending not to see what was happening right in front of them. It was then that a deep voice cut through the icy morning air. "Stop that right now." Theodore Vance, 52 years old, had risen from the last pew where he had watched the whole scene unfold. Tall and thin, with dark hair already graying at the temples, he wore a black overcoat that contrasted with his pale skin. His brown eyes, normally melancholy, now shone with an indignation that he hadn't felt in a long time. The janitor turned, immediately recognizing one of the most respected businessmen in town. "Mr. Vance, you were humiliating a child and an elderly woman in front of the church," Theodore interrupted, descending the steps until he stood beside Lily and Rose. "That's what you were doing." Theodore knelt before Lily, who watched him with a mixture of fear and curiosity. Her big brown eyes, moist with tears, seemed to hold secrets too deep for a child her age. There was something in that look that touched him in an inexplicable way, as if she could see through the layers of pain that he had carried for 3 years. "Are you hurt?" he asked softly, examining the cut on the girl's knee. Lily shook her head, but Theodore noticed how she instinctively flinched when he approached. It was a subtle movement, almost imperceptible, but it spoke of experiences that no child should have. "Sir, we don't need your pity," Rose said with wounded pride, although her voice betrayed extreme exhaustion. "Lily and I can manage on our own." Theodore stood up, observing the dignity that emanated from that lady, despite all the hardships. There was something familiar in that stubborn pride, a strength that he recognized from himself during the most difficult moments after losing Claire. "It's not pity," he replied, surprising himself with his own words. "It's shame. Shame to be part of a community that allows this to happen." The janitor tried to intervene again. "Mr. Vance, you don't understand. These two show up here every week, disturbing the peace of the parishioners." "Disturbing?" Theodore's voice grew dangerously. "A child and an elderly woman praying silently disturb more than you, shouting and pushing people down the steps?" Some onlookers began to gather around the scene. Theodore recognized familiar faces from the local elite, People with whom he did business frequented the same social circles. Everyone watched in silence, waiting to see how this embarrassing situation would resolve itself. It was then that Beverly Sterling appeared in the crowd. At 45 years old, she was one of the most influential businesswomen in town, owner of 3 stores in the historic downtown, and known for her sharp tongue and categorical opinions about everyone's place in society. Her impeccably styled blonde hair and her expensive wool coat contrasted drastically with the simplicity of Rose and Lily. "Theodore, darling," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "What an unpleasant situation. Perhaps it's best if these people seek help from the appropriate agencies." "These people," Theodore repeated, emphasizing each word, "are a grandmother and her granddaughter who came to pray, just like us." Beverly frowned, clearly annoyed with the position that Theodore was taking. "But you must agree that there are more appropriate places for people in need. The most appropriate place for anyone who wants to pray is inside the church," he replied firmly. Rose squeezed Lily's hand more tightly, feeling the tension in the air. The girl, in turn, watched all the movement with an almost supernatural attention, as if she were recording every detail, every expression, every word in her extraordinary memory. A gift that had not yet been discovered by anyone. "Come with me," Theodore said suddenly, extending his hand to Rose. "My car is over there. I'll take you to a place where you can clean up and eat something warm." Rose hesitated, her protective instinct in conflict with the extreme exhaustion and the hunger that had been gnawing at her stomach for days. Lily gently tugged on the hem of her grandmother's dress, whispering something in her ear that made the old woman's eyes fill with tears. "Why would you do this for us?" Rose asked distrustfully. Theodore paused for a moment, looking at Lily, who was watching him with those penetrating eyes. For the first time in 3 years since he had lost Claire in that terrible accident, he felt something stirring in his chest, an inexplicable need to protect, to care for, to not allow more suffering to happen right in front of him when he could do something to prevent it. "Because it's the right thing to do," he replied, but there was something else in his voice, a deep pain that Rose immediately recognized. As they walked towards Theodore's car, none of them realized that this encounter would change their lives, in ways they could never have imagined. What had begun as an impulsive act of indignation was about to turn into something much more complex and dangerous. Lily looked back one last time, automatically memorizing every face in the crowd that had witnessed her humiliation, every detail of the church's architecture, every word that had been said. Her extraordinary mind recorded everything without her yet understanding the power she carried, a power that would soon put them all in a situation from which they might not be able to escape. Theodore's house was located on top of a hill, in one of the most upscale neighborhoods in Aspen. It was an Alpine-style construction with dark wood and large windows that offered a panoramic view of the pine-covered mountains. The silence that reigned there contrasted drastically with the agitation they had left behind at the church. Lily held Rose's hand firmly as they walked through the well-manicured garden to the main entrance. Her curious eyes absorbed every detail of the property. The precisely pruned rose bushes, the cobblestone path, the ornamental fountain that hadn't worked in months. Without realizing it, her extraordinary mind was creating a perfect mental map of everything she saw. "My lord," Rose murmured, impressed by the grandeur of the place. "Mr. Vance, we can't—" "You can and you will," he interrupted, opening the massive wooden door. "At least until you recover from what happened today." The interior of the house was elegant, but it carried a melancholy atmosphere that Rose immediately noticed. Expensive furniture covered by a thin layer of dust, photographs turned face down in some rooms, and a heavy silence that spoke of deep loneliness. It was the house of a man who had stopped truly living. Theodore guided them to the kitchen, a spacious room with wooden cabinets and a rustic table in the center. "I'll prepare something for you to eat," he said, moving through the space with a familiarity that indicated he had been cooking for himself for a long time. Lily sat down on one of the chairs, swinging her legs that didn't reach the floor. She watched Theodore with an intensity that made him slightly uncomfortable. There was something in that look that seemed to see through him, as if the girl could detect layers of sadness that he was trying to hide from the world. "Has she always been like this?" Theodore asked Rose as he heated some soup on the stove. "Like what?" replied the old woman, carefully adjusting Lily's grey hair. "So observant, so attentive to everything." Rose exchanged a quick look with her granddaughter, a moment of silent communication that did not go unnoticed by Theodore. "Lily has always been a special child," she said carefully. "She sees things that others don't." While they ate in silence, Theodore noticed how Lily watched his movements when he went to a small safe in the pantry to get money to buy clothes for them. Without anyone noticing, the girl instantly memorized the sequence of numbers he typed, 150884, Claire's birthday date, although Lily had no way of knowing that. "Do you have anywhere to stay?" Theodore asked, returning to the table. Rose lowered her eyes, ashamed. "We lost our home 3 months ago. Since then, we've been sleeping wherever we can, sometimes at the bus station, sometimes in temporary shelters." "Why did you lose your home?" The question hung in the air for long seconds. Rose fidgeted nervously with her hands, clearly struggling between pride and the need to be honest with someone who was being kind to them. "My husband got sick," she said finally. "Cancer. The treatments cost everything we had saved in 40 years of marriage. When he left us, the debts remained. The bank took the house." Theodore felt a familiar pain spreading through his chest. The mention of illness and loss instantly transported him back to that terrible night 3 years ago when he received the call about Claire's accident. The feeling of helplessness, of not being able to save those he loved, returned in full force. "And Lily's parents?" he asked, trying to push away his own painful memories. Again, that look exchanged between grandmother and granddaughter. This time, Lily whispered something in Rose's ear that made the old woman even more tense. "Lily is my responsibility," Rose said evasively. "Always has been." Theodore realized that there were secrets there, but decided not to press. He himself had his own secrets, his own pains that he didn't share with anyone. "There's a small house in the back of the property," he said suddenly, surprising himself. "It's where the caretaker lived, but it's been empty for 2 years. You can stay there while you get organized." Rose stared at him as if he had spoken in another language. "Mr. Theodore, we have no way to pay." "I'm not asking for payment," he replied. "I'm offering help." "But why?" she insisted. "You don't even know us." Theodore looked at Lily, who continued to watch him with those penetrating eyes. There was something about their presence that made the emptiness of his house seem less oppressive, the silence less deafening. "Because this house is too big for one person," he said, being more honest than he intended. That afternoon, while Theodore showed them the small house in the back, he didn't realize he was being watched. Beverly Sterling had parked her car down the street with a perfect view of the property. Her narrow eyes followed every movement, every gesture, her mind already plotting the social consequences of Theodore's impulsive decision. The house in the back was simple but comfortable. 2 small bedrooms, a living room integrated with a kitchen and a bathroom. It had everything 2 people needed to live decently. For Rose and Lily, who had spent the last few months sleeping on bus station benches, it seemed like a palace. "It's temporary," Theodore emphasized, but there was something in his voice that suggested he himself didn't believe it. "Until you can get settled." Lily ran through the rooms of the house with an energy that Rose hadn't seen in months. For the first time since they lost everything, the girl smiled genuinely. She stopped in front of a window overlooking the main house and waved to Theodore, who felt something stir in his chest, a feeling he hadn't experienced since before he lost Claire. That night, alone in the big house, Theodore went to the room he had kept locked for 3 years, the room that had been Claire's. His hands trembled as he turned the key, and the scent of faded perfume hit him like a punch in the stomach. He sat on the edge of the bed, looking at the photographs he kept on the bedside table. Claire smiling on their wedding day, Claire in the garden watering the flowers, Claire, always Claire. Tears that he hadn't shed for months began to run down his face. "What am I doing, my love?" he whispered to the photograph. "Why did I bring strangers into our house?" But deep down, he knew the answer. For the first time in 3 years, there was human noise around. Children's laughter echoing through the garden, voices talking, life happening. The house no longer seemed like a mausoleum of memories. Meanwhile, in the house in the back, Rose put Lily to sleep in the first real bed the girl had had in months, but the old woman couldn't relax. There were secrets weighing on her conscience, truths about Lily's origin that she had kept for years and that could destroy the chance of stability they had found. "Grandma," Lily murmured, already sleepy. "The man, is he going to send us away?" "I don't know, my dear," Rose replied, kissing the girl's forehead. "I don't know." Across town, Beverly Sterling was making calls to her friends in local high society, spreading the news about Theodore Vance's scandalous decision. In less than 24 hours, the entire Aspen elite would know that the respected businessman had taken beggars to live on his property. And in his knitting factory in the industrial district of town, Jean Morales, Theodore's former partner, smiled as he received a call informing him of the latest developments. For 2 years, he had been planning his revenge against the man who had discovered his petty thefts and refused to fire him quietly. Now, finally, Theodore had given him the perfect ammunition to begin destroying his reputation. What none of them knew was that Lily, lying in her new bed, was whispering a sequence of numbers in the dark. 150884. Without understanding the meaning, she had memorized the combination to Theodore's safe, a secret that would soon become much more important than any of them could imagine. 3 weeks had passed since Lily and Rose moved into the cottage. The routine had settled in naturally. Theodore left early for the factory, leaving Rose to tend the garden that she had begun to restore out of gratitude, while Lily played alone, among the trees, always observing everything with that extraordinary attention. It was on a rainy morning in July that the first major crisis erupted. Theodore had returned from the factory earlier than usual, his face etched with worry. Rose was in the kitchen of the main house preparing lunch, a routine that had arisen naturally, without anyone formally asking or offering. "Did something happen?" she asked, noticing the tension in his shoulders. Theodore sat down heavily at the table, running his hands over his face. "Problems at the factory. An important order was sabotaged. 500 wool coats that took 2 weeks to produce turned up with inexplicable defects." "Sabotaged how?" "Someone changed the settings on the machines during the night. When the employees arrived in the morning, half of the production was already ruined. I'm going to lose the contract with the department store chain in Denver." Rose poured him a coffee, her careful movements reflecting her concern. "Do you have any idea who might have done this?" "Jean," Theodore said without hesitation. "My former partner. 2 years ago, I discovered that he was embezzling materials from the company. I offered him the chance to return everything quietly and leave, but he refused, said I was being unfair, that they were just loans." Lily appeared in the doorway of the kitchen, her dark hair still damp from the rain. She had gone out to play, in the garden, but something in Theodore's tense voice had drawn her back. As always, she positioned herself where she could observe without being noticed, absorbing every word. "Since then, he's been causing problems," Theodore continued. "He convinces employees to do poor work, spreads rumors about the company's financial situation. But this has gone too far." "Why don't you fire him?" Rose asked. "Because he knows some company secrets that could hurt me. Nothing illegal, but let's just say I didn't always follow every bureaucratic rule to the letter in the early days of the business. Jean documented everything." Lily listened attentively, her extraordinary mind processing every piece of information. Without anyone noticing, she was building a complex mental map of the relationships and problems surrounding her new life. That afternoon, while Theodore had returned to the factory to try to resolve the disaster, Rose received an unexpected visit. Beverly Sterling appeared at the door of the main house with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Pardon me, I don't know your name," Beverly said, examining Rose from head to toe with poorly disguised disdain. "Rose. Rose Smith. What an interesting name. May I come in? I'd like to talk about your situation here." Rose hesitated, but eventually allowed Beverly to enter. The businesswoman examined the interior of the house with critical eyes, noting every detail of the elegant decor, every valuable object. "Theodore has always been very generous," Beverly said, sitting down in the living room without being invited. "Sometimes too generous for his own good." "If you've come here to insult us, you can leave," Rose replied with dignity. "On the contrary," Beverly smiled, "I've come to offer a solution. You see, your presence is causing comments in the neighborhood. Respectable people are questioning Theodore's judgment. This could harm his business." Rose remained silent, waiting for the rest. "I know an excellent family in Boulder, good people who are looking for a girl to adopt. They could give Lily a much better life than this." "Lily is not up for adoption," Rose said firmly. "But she should be," Beverly insisted. "A child needs stability, a proper education, a future. What can you offer her, a beggar's life?" The words hit Rose like physical blows because they echoed her own secret fears. Every night she wondered if she was being selfish by keeping Lily with her, if it wouldn't be better for the girl to have a real family. "And what about me?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "There's a very nice nursing home here in town, a dignified place for people your age. I can arrange a vacancy." It was at that moment that Lily appeared in the room, coming silently from the kitchen where she had overheard the entire conversation. Her large eyes stared at Beverly with an intensity that made the woman feel uncomfortable. "This must be the famous Lily," Beverly said, forcing a maternal smile. "What a pretty girl. Tell me, dear, wouldn't you like to have a real home, with toys, new clothes, a private school?" Lily didn't answer, but continued to stare at Beverly with that penetrating gaze. There was something in the girl's behavior that made the businesswoman nervous, as if she were being analyzed and judged. "She's kind of strange, isn't she?" Beverly commented to Rose. "Maybe she needs specialized care." "There's nothing wrong with Lily," Rose defended. "Of course not," Beverly said quickly. "But a child who has experienced trauma sometimes develops peculiarities. The family I mentioned has experience with special cases." When Theodore arrived home that night, he found Rose visibly shaken and Lily quieter than usual. During dinner, the tension was palpable. "Did something happen?" he asked finally. Rose told him about Beverly's visit, omitting only the cruelest details of the businesswoman's words. Theodore listened in silence, his expression growing darker. "She has no right to interfere in our lives," he said when Rose finished. "But maybe she's right about some things," Rose murmured. "Maybe Lily deserves more than I can give her." Theodore observed the girl, who was playing silently with the food on her plate. "Lily, he said softly. "Do you want to go live with other people?" The girl looked up, that extraordinary gaze fixed on his. "I want to stay with Grandma Rose," she said simply. "And with you." The simple words hit Theodore in an unexpected way. It was the first time Lily had directly expressed her desire to stay there, and something in his chest warmed in a way he hadn't felt in years. "Then you'll stay," he said, more to himself than to them. But that simple decision was about to trigger consequences that none of them could foresee. The next morning, Theodore arrived at the factory to find 3 employees waiting to hand in their resignations. Jean had spread the news about the beggars living in the boss's house, suggesting that Theodore was losing focus on the business. "Is it true that you're sheltering strange people in your house?" asked Marina, one of the best seamstresses. "Dangerous people." "Dangerous," Theodore repeated incredulously. "Mr. Morales said they're people who might be running from something, that this could harm us." Theodore realized that he was facing something bigger than simple sabotage. Jean wasn't just attacking his company, but trying to destroy his personal life as well. That afternoon, when he returned home earlier, he found Lily alone in the garden, playing with sticks and leaves. Rose was resting, lately more tired than usual. "Lily," he called, approaching, "can I ask you something?" The girl nodded, always observant. "You remember things easily." "I remember everything," she replied naturally, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. "Everything?" "The number you put in the little box in the kitchen, 150884. Theodore froze. He had opened the safe only once in her presence, and very quickly. It was impossible for a 6-year-old to have memorized the sequence. "How did you—" "I see and remember," Lily said simply. "It's always been like this." At that moment, Theodore understood that there was something extraordinary about the girl he had taken in, something that could change everything or make their lives infinitely more complicated. Because if Lily really had a perfect memory, there was much more at stake than just giving shelter to a child in need, and the right people would pay any price to have access to a mind like that. The discovery about Lily's extraordinary memory left Theodore in a state of shock for days. He watched the girl with a mixture of fascination and worry, noticing details that had previously gone unnoticed. How she knew the name of all the birds that visited the garden after hearing them only once. How she recited entire conversations, a word for word, how her eyes seemed to photograph everything around. A week after the revelation, the situation at the factory worsened dramatically. Theodore arrived at work to find 2 sewing machines with damaged parts and an entire batch of high-quality wool mysteriously contaminated with oil. The losses already exceeded $200,000, and suppliers were beginning to question his ability to fulfill contracts. "I need to fire Jean," he said to himself, but he knew it wouldn't be simple. The former partner had made sure to keep evidence of all the irregularities from the early years of the company, when Theodore was struggling to keep the business running. A dismissal could result in denunciations that would destroy everything he had built. That afternoon, while walking through the garden trying to organize his thoughts, Theodore found Lily sitting under a tree, drawing in the dirt with a stick. He approached curiously and saw that she had created a complex diagram with numbers and interconnected lines. "What is this, Lily?" "The numbers from your company," she replied naturally. "I heard you talking on the phone about money." Theodore knelt beside her, examining the drawing in the dirt. In amazement, he recognized exact values of contracts, payment dates, and even financial projections that he had mentioned in phone conversations that he thought she wasn't paying attention to. "Do you understand what these numbers mean?" Lily shook her head. "No, but I remember them, and I see that some don't match others." "How do you mean they don't match?" The girl pointed to a specific sequence. "These numbers you said on Monday, these on Wednesday, but they're about the same thing. and they're different. Theodore felt a chill run down his spine. Lily had detected inconsistencies in his own, financial calculations, discrepancies that he hadn't noticed. Her mind not only memorized information, but identified patterns and contradictions instinctively. "Lily," he said carefully, "this information that you remember, do you tell other people?" "Only Grandma Rose. Sometimes." "And does she understand?" "No. She gets worried when I say too many numbers." Theodore realized that he was facing something extraordinary and potentially dangerous. If Lily's ability became known, there would be people willing to do anything to exploit her. Meanwhile, on the other side of town, Beverly Sterling was meeting with Jean Morales in a discreet cafe in the historic downtown. It was the first time the two had spoken in person, united only by a common goal: to cause problems for Theodore Vance. "The situation is becoming unsustainable," Beverly was saying, nervously stirring the sugar in her coffee. "That woman and the child are turning the reputation of the neighborhood into a scandal. The neighbors don't talk about anything else." "And things aren't any better at the factory," Jean replied with a satisfied smile. "The employees are losing confidence in him. 2 clients have already cancelled contracts, but it needs to be more subtle," Beverly warned. "If it's too obvious that you're sabotaging him, he can sue you. Leave that to me. I have information that can ruin him if necessary. Documents from the early years of the company that show irregularities." Beverly smiled. "And I have contacts in social services, people who can question whether that strange child is being properly cared for." "Strange how?" "There's something wrong with her. The way she looks at people, how she stays silent watching everything. It's not normal. The social worker I know said that traumatized children sometimes develop obsessive behaviors." Jean frowned. "What kind of behaviors?" "Fixation on details, selective memory, social isolation. They could be signs that the child has witnessed or suffered serious things." What neither of them knew was that their suspicions about Lily weren't completely wrong, but for reasons very different from what they imagined. That night, Rose was particularly restless. Her heart symptoms, which she hid from everyone, had worsened in recent weeks. The stress of the situation, added to years of worry and deprivation, were taking their toll. She knew she needed to tell Theodore the truth about Lily, but she couldn't find the courage. "Grandma, are you okay?" Lily asked, noticing Rose's paleness. "I'm fine, my dear, just a little tired." Lily watched her with that characteristic intensity. "Are you afraid of something?" The direct question made Rose jump. She sometimes forgot how perceptive Lily was, how much she could read in people. "Why do you ask that?" "Because you talk in your sleep. You keep apologizing and talking about telling the truth." Rose felt her heart race dangerously. "What more will he send us away?" "I don't know, my dear," Rose replied, kissing the girl's forehead. "I don't know." That night, Theodore received a call that would change everything. It was from Dr. Grant Miller, a renowned neuropsychologist who had heard rumors about a child with extraordinary mnemonic abilities. "Mr. Vance, I would like to speak with you about the girl who lives with you. I have information that may be very important to you." "What kind of information?" "About her special capabilities, and about why certain people may be interested in those capabilities." Theodore felt his blood run cold. "Can you explain further?" "In person would be better. Can I visit you tomorrow?" After hanging up the phone, Theodore understood that the peaceful life they had begun to build was about to become drastically more complicated. Lily's ability was no longer a secret among them, and people with unknown intentions were beginning to show interest. That night, as he watched Lily playing in the garden under the twilight, he made a decision that would change the destiny of everyone. No matter what happened, he would protect that makeshift family that had become more important to him than his own life. But the forces that were already in motion were more powerful and dangerous than any of them could imagine. Dr. Grant Miller arrived the next morning driving a nondescript car, but Lily immediately noticed that he was observing the house with professional attention, even before ringing the doorbell. She was at the window of the cottage when she saw the grey-haired man with glasses examine every detail of the property, and something in his posture made her uneasy. Theodore received the neuropsychologist in the main living room, while Rose and Lily remained in the cottage as a precaution. Dr. Miller was an elegant man of approximately 60 years old, with a cordial demeanor that couldn't completely disguise an almost scientific intensity in his eyes. "Mr. Vance, thank you for receiving me," he said, settling into the armchair. "What I'm about to share may sound alarming, but it's necessary for you to understand the situation you are in." "I'm listening." Children with exceptional mnemonic abilities are extremely rare. We're talking about perhaps 1 in 10 million. When identified, these children often become targets of commercial interest. Theodore felt his stomach clench. Commercial? Companies specializing in data security, organizations that deal with confidential information, even governments. A person capable of memorizing and processing information with perfect accuracy has incalculable value in the modern world. "Lily is just a child," Theodore protested. "Exactly, and that's why I'm here to warn you. There are people who would have no problem exploiting a child if it represented profit or strategic advantage." Dr. Miller opened a folder he had brought. "I have received information that you are being watched. Someone has been asking about the girl in very specific circles. Circles where this type of ability sparks immediate interest." "What kind of questions?" "About her origin, about who has her legal guardianship, about the stability of the family situation. Questions that someone would ask if they were assessing the feasibility of acquiring access to her." Theodore stood up abruptly, walking to the window. Outside, he could see Lily playing in the garden, completely oblivious to the danger that may be approaching. "What do you suggest?" "First, solid legal documentation. Your current situation is vulnerable. A child without official documentation, living with people who are not relatives. Second, absolute discretion. The fewer people who know about her abilities, the better." "And if we wanted to move? Leave town?" Dr. Miller shook his head. "If there is truly established interest, running would only confirm that there is something to hide. The best thing is to normalize the situation, make it official and legal." While the two men were talking, Rose was facing her own crisis in the cottage. She had woken up in the morning with chest pains more intense than normal, and her breathing was becoming increasingly difficult. Sitting on the edge of the bed, she watched Lily drawing another of her complex diagrams on the floor. "Grandma, you're different today," Lily commented without looking up from the drawing. "How so, dear?" "Your breathing is making a different noise, and your hands are shaky." Rose looked at her own hands and realized that Lily was right. The girl observed, and recorded changes so subtle that she herself hadn't consciously noticed them. "It's just tiredness," she lied. "It's not," Lily replied simply. "It's like Grandpa Earl before he passed." The comparison hit Rose like a blow. Earl, her late husband, had presented similar symptoms in the last months of his life. The possibility that Lily was unconsciously identifying signs that her time was running out filled her with panic. "Lily, if something happens to me, you promise you'll stay with Mr. Vance." The girl finally looked up. "Is something going to happen?" "I don't know, but promise." "I promise. But you can't leave. I need you." Rose hugged the girl, feeling tears burning her eyes. There was so much that still needed to be told, so many secrets that could protect Lily in the future. That afternoon, after Dr. Miller left, Theodore headed to the factory with his mind heavy with worries. The conversation had confirmed his worst fears about Lily's situation, but it had also strengthened him in his determination to protect her. At the factory, he found a situation even worse than he expected. Jean had convinced 3 more employees to resign, claiming that the company was on the verge of bankruptcy. In addition, there were rumors that he was offering better jobs in a new company that he would supposedly open in town. "Mr. Vance," said Carrie, the production supervisor, "I need to speak with you in private." They went to the office, where Carrie closed the door carefully. "Mr. Morales is planning something bigger," she said in a low voice. "Yesterday I overheard him talking on the phone about documents that could solve the Theodore problem definitively." "What kind of documents?" "Something about irregularities in the early years of the company. He mentioned that he has copies of everything stored in a safe place." Theodore felt the ground open beneath his feet. In the early years of the factory, when he was struggling to keep the business running, he had made some questionable decisions, nothing criminal, but enough to cause problems with the IRS if investigated. "There's more," Carrie continued. "He's spreading stories about your personal life, about the people who live in your house." "What kind of stories?" "That the child may be your daughter, that you're hiding something. That's why you brought them, to live with you." The suggestion was as absurd as it was offensive, but Theodore immediately understood how dangerous it could be. In a small town like Aspen, rumors like that took on a life of their own. When he returned home that night, Theodore found Rose visibly worse. She tried to disguise it, but her lips were slightly blue, and she moved with difficulty. "Rose, you need to see a doctor," he said, alarmed. "It's nothing," she insisted. "I just need to rest." "It's not just tiredness. Lily, tell her what you observed today." The girl looked between the 2 adults, sensing the tension. "Grandma is breathing differently, and her nails are a little purple." Rose could no longer deny the obvious. "All right. Maybe it would be good to take a look." That night at the local hospital, the diagnosis confirmed the worst fears. Rose was suffering from severe heart failure. Her heart, weakened by years of stress and worry, was failing. "She needs urgent surgery," explained the cardiologist. "But it's an expensive and complex procedure. It will have to be done in Denver." "How much does it cost?" Theodore asked. "Between $200,000 and $300,000, including hospitalization and recovery." Theodore felt the world spinning. With the problems at the factory, he didn't have access to that amount without selling part of the company or mortgaging the house. And even if he got the money, Rose might not survive the wait. Lily, who had been silent during the entire medical conversation, absorbing every word, approached Theodore. "Are you going to be able to save her?" she asked simply. The direct question, asked with that absolute confidence that only a child could have, broke Theodore's heart. "I'm going to do everything I can." "Promise?" "I promise." But as he made that promise, Theodore knew that he was facing the most impossible choice of his life. To save Rose, he might need to accept help from people whose intentions towards Lily he couldn't trust. And on the other side of town, Beverly Sterling was finishing a very interesting phone call. The wealthy family from Boulder that she had contacted, the Sterling, was very interested in information about a specific child who might be living in Aspen. The financial compensation offered for this information would be more than enough to solve any problem that Theodore Vance might have. All she needed to do was confirm a few details about the girl and her origin. The net was closing, and Lily, with her extraordinary memory, was about to become the center of a dispute that would determine not only her future, but the survival of the only family she had known. 3 days had passed since Rose's diagnosis, and her condition was deteriorating rapidly. Theodore had spent sleepless nights trying to find a financial solution, but every door seemed to close. The bank had refused to lend money with the factory in crisis, and selling the property would take months that Rose didn't have. It was on the morning of the fourth day that Beverly appeared at his door with a proposal that would change everything. "Theodore, I heard about Rose's situation," she said, feigning genuine concern. "What a tragedy, but maybe I can help." Theodore received her in the living room, desperate enough to listen to any offer. "How?" "I know a family in Boulder, very well-positioned people who do philanthropy in extreme medical cases. They could cover all the costs of the surgery." "In exchange for what?" Beverly smiled. "They have a special interest in unique talents. I heard that Lily has extraordinary memory skills." Theodore's stomach clenched. "And what exactly do they want with her?" "Nothing harmful," Beverly lied smoothly. "Just assess her capabilities, maybe offer specialized education. Think about it. She would have access to resources that she could never have here." "And if I refuse, then Rose will die," Beverly said, abandoning any pretense of delicacy. "It's that simple. You can save a life or watch two people you love suffer unnecessarily." Theodore kicked her out of the house, but the words echoed in his mind. That afternoon, while visiting Rose at the hospital, she perceived his despair. "Theodore," she said in a weak voice, "you're considering something terrible, aren't you?" "I don't know what else to do," he admitted. "I can't let you die. And you can't hand Lily over to dangerous people," she finished. "There's something I need to tell you, something that could change everything." With great effort, Rose told Theodore about the letter that Letitia had left, a letter that she had kept hidden all these years, with information about the Sterling family and evidence of what had happened to Lily's mother. "The letter is in a box under my bed," she whispered. "Along with the money." "What money?" $50,000 that I saved for years sewing. I hid it because I was afraid someone would try to rob us. It's not enough for the surgery, but it's something." Theodore rushed home and found the box exactly where Rose said. Inside was a considerable amount of money and a letter yellowed with time. When he read the contents, he finally understood the magnitude of the danger surrounding Lily. Letitia wasn't just a domestic worker who had suffered abuse. She had discovered a money laundering scheme in the Sterling's company, and they had silenced her violently. Lily's pregnancy had resulted from a rape perpetrated by the very patriarch of the family, and the letter contained specific details about bank accounts and illegal transactions. That night, Theodore called Lily for a serious conversation. "Lily, I need you to use your special memory to help me with something very important." "Is it about Grandma Rose?" "Yes, and about you too." He showed her factory documents, explaining how Jean had been sabotaging the company. "If you can remember all the numbers and dates here, you can help me prove that he's lying about some things." Lily studied the papers for only a few minutes, her extraordinary mind absorbing every detail. "Done," she said. "But there are numbers here that don't match others that you said on the phone last week." "How so?" "Jean changed some numbers in the papers. The values he showed to other people are different from the true values you had." Theodore felt a glimmer of hope. "Are you sure?" "I am. I can draw for you what the original numbers were." In the following hours, Lily reconstructed from memory financial documents that proved not only Jean's sabotage, but also that he had been embezzling money from the company for years through fake invoices and ghost contracts. "Lily," Theodore said, amazed, "you just saved the factory. And will that save Grandma Rose?" "It will help a lot." The next morning, Theodore confronted Jean with the evidence. The former partner, realizing that he had been discovered, tried to negotiate. "You can't prove anything," he said nervously. "I can," Theodore replied, showing the documents reconstructed by Lily. "And you're going to return every penny you stole, or I'm handing all of this over to the police." Jean, cornered, revealed where he had hidden the embezzled money, almost $300,000 in a secret account. "It was for my retirement," he tried to justify. "Now it's going to be for saving a life," Theodore said. But the victory was interrupted by a terrifying discovery. When he returned home, he found Dr. Miller waiting for him with alarming news. "Mr. Vance, the Sterling family is on their way to Aspen. They know where Lily is, and they're coming with questionable legal documents claiming rights over her." "What kind of rights?" "They claim that she is the biological daughter of a family member and that she was kidnapped. It's a lie, but it may work temporarily." Theodore felt panic take over. "What can we do?" "Letitia's letter changes everything," Dr. Miller said after reading the document. "It's evidence of serious crimes, but we need to get to the police before they get to you." That afternoon, in a race against time, Theodore took the evidence to the FBI in Denver. Letitia's letter, combined with Lily's extraordinary memory that managed to recite by heart account numbers mentioned in the letter, provided sufficient evidence to open an immediate investigation against the Sterling family. When the Sterlings arrived in Aspen the next morning, they were greeted not by a defenseless child, but by a police operation that was waiting for them. Beverly, discovering that she had become involved with real criminals, tried to distance herself from the situation, but it was too late. Her participation in the conspiracy was documented in the recordings that Dr. Miller had made of their conversations. With the money recovered from Jean and an unexpected donation from a medical assistance fund, mobilized by Dr. Miller, Rose's surgery was successfully performed. During the long days of recovery, Theodore finally found the courage to do what he had been considering for weeks. 3 months later, in a simple ceremony at the Aspen courthouse, Theodore formalized the adoption of Lily. Rose, still in recovery but visibly better, cried with joy as she saw the girl finally have a legal and protected family. "Now you are officially my daughter," Theodore said to Lily after the ceremony. "And you are officially my dad," she replied, smiling. Dr. Miller helped establish a special protocol for Lily's education, ensuring that her extraordinary abilities were developed in a healthy way, without exploitation. She would attend a special school a few times a week, but continue living a normal childhood life. The factory, free from Jean's sabotage and with its reputation restored, thrived again. Theodore decided to turn it into a cooperative where employees would share in the profits, ensuring that no one else would feel tempted to sabotage the business out of resentment. Rose, strengthened by the surgery and new medications, assumed the role of Lily's official grandmother and became a constant and loving presence in their lives. A year later, on a sunny winter afternoon, Theodore found in the room that had been Claire's a letter she had hidden years ago. In the letter, she expressed her dream of one day adopting a child, giving love to someone who needed it. "It seems you knew what you were doing from the beginning," he whispered to his wife's photograph. Lily appeared at the door of the room, watching him with that loving intensity that he had learned to love. "Are you sad?" she asked. "No," he replied, hugging her. "I'm grateful." "Why?" "Because sometimes the strongest families are those we choose with our heart." Lily smiled, her extraordinary memory recording that moment of happiness forever. Finally, after so much suffering and uncertainty, she had found not only a home, but a family that loved her exactly as she was, extraordinary, special, and deeply loved. And in the small town of Aspen, where everything had begun with an act of compassion on the steps of a church, a new story of family love was written every day, proving that miracles still happen when brave hearts open to protect the most vulnerable.